Man finds ugly creature in the forest, look at what it became. He brought the caged creature into the vet at arm's length. He had no idea what it was but aimed to find out. He couldn't sleep anymore ever since he started hearing the voices in his house at night, and the burning it left on his hands. They had only started after he had fatefully found the ugly thing in the forest. He had to find out what the creature was before it was too late. The Amazon rainforest is a beautiful yet hazardous place. Thousands of tourists travel to South America every year to explore the incredible terrain. One man named Paulo Silva was an avid hiker and knew more of the secret trails that tourists didn't. Paulo lived in Brazil all his life and took advantage of the fact that most of the Amazon rainforest are located in his home country. Paulo would go on hikes with his father as a young teenager. This is where the fascination with animals and nature came from. Now as a young adult he still loved taking the lesser-known trails that his father had taught him. But Paulo was unaware of what he would find on one of the old trails, and how it would change his life forever. While hiking on a Saturday morning, Paulo stumbled across a small creature in the middle of a clearing. He knew to respect nature and slowly approached it. Soon it was apparent that the creature was a baby of its kind. It clearly couldn't look after itself, and he knew he had to save it, but he had no idea what it would grow into. The poor creature had a sharp beak, bulbous eyes, and sharp talons. Anyone else might have left it there, but Paulo knew that appearances aren't everything. No matter how ugly, he had to save it. He carefully scooped it up with his jacket and headed back to his city, Manaus, but he had no idea what kind of hair-raising transformation the creature would undertake in the next few months. Paulo knew that he had to care for it personally. He couldn't trust anyone else with the task, not even his local vet. They might have taken it away from him, and then who would take care of it? In Brazil, there was a zero-tolerance policy on exotic wildlife, especially if it was dangerous. It seemed alien though, so he had to be careful about how to care for it properly since he still wasn't sure what it was. After a few weeks, it started to grow bigger, but something was very different about this animal that he couldn't quite put his finger on, but he would soon wish he had known more about the animal before taking it in. Paulo invited one of his friends over to come and see the little creature. By now the animal was getting bigger and looked healthier. He had carefully raised it to the point where it was thriving. But when his friend saw the ugly-looking creature, he looked like he was ready to turn and run straight out the door. Paulo didn't understand. His friend just recommended that he get rid of it, but Paulo didn't listen to his warning. Now that a few months had gone by, the creature had developed more distinguishing features. It now had colorful feathers, a black beak, and a long feathered tail, but he then realized that maybe he should have listened. After taking care of the animal, he felt his hands begin to itch and burn. Was he allergic to it? Was it venomous? Luckily, Paulo kept an ointment in his bathroom cabinet for any kind of rashes. Paulo breathed a sigh of relief as the ointment helped, but why were his hands burning in the first place? What was he dealing with? Paulo kept the animal in a cage just outside of his bedroom, but it was soon apparent that that was a mistake. He locked the cage at night at around 10 p.m. when he went to bed. But during the night he heard something that ran chills down his spine. It would have him regret ever having the creature so close to where he slept. One night Paulo was woken by the sound of something oddly familiar, a man's voice. His eyes snapped open. He had never heard another voice in his apartment before since he lived alone. He slowly raised himself from his bed and turned on the light. He was sure the voice was right on the other side of his door. He took a deep breath and approached the door before opening it. There was nothing on the other side, but it wasn't the last time he would hear the voice. The next morning Paulo raced out of his house. He had to get to the bottom of this once and for all. He decided to go to his local vet with the animal to find out what it was, hoping he'd also find out a reason behind what he had heard the previous night. The vet's eyes went wide in disbelief when Paulo showed the creature to them. He was grateful he had kept it in a cage just by the way the vet looked at it. But the vet's expression changed from surprise to relief. It seems that he recognized the animal and reassured Paulo that it was nothing dangerous. It was a macaw, the biggest parrot species and a common sight in the Amazon rainforest. But what about the strange voice that Paulo had heard? And the rash? Neither had started before he took the animal in, and it was what worried him the most. The vet reassured Paulo that it was common for macaws to mimic sounds they hear in their environment. The macaw could have heard either Paulo or his television and picked up a word or two. Paulo blamed himself for being half asleep for not connecting the dots. He was red with embarrassment, but the vet assured him that he had still done the right thing raising the macaw. But what about the rash on his hands? The vet had an explanation for that too. He reassured Paulo that he must have touched a poisonous plant that gave him the mild burning when left on the skin. He said it would go away in no more than another week. Paulo always had an appreciation for the wildlife that his father had taught him at an early age. After all, it was the reason why he had taken in the animal in the first place. He decided that he would keep the macaw and give it a home as well as a name, Manuel, after his father. Since learning that it was a macaw, Paulo has grown a strong bond with Manuel, and it doesn't look like they'll be separated anytime soon. It goes to show that appearances can be deceiving and that kindness can result in having a lifelong friend. After all, Paulo and Manuel will be together for a while since macaws live to be an incredible 50 years old.
Thank you for watching this fantastic story. Please tap one of the two videos on your screen for another amazing Wonder Stories.